Alright, the first thing that we need to kind of do with our resonator guitar here is I guess first is to make sure we have a box that's going to be suitable for what we're going to do. What we're going to use is a 6-inch spun aluminum cone, which we've always gotten ours from our resonator guitars from Republic Guitar. Frank down at Republic's a heck of a nice guy. If you're looking for a resonator guitar, one you can buy, I highly recommend you go see Frank down there. If you're looking for parts or you're going to buy or build your own resonator guitar, go see Frank. Gosh, several years ago we made a video on what makes a resonator work. If you're not familiar with what makes a resonator work, hit me up at deltagrooveguitars@gmail.com and I'll send you the link to that. I'm not going to go into that here as far as explaining what makes a resonator work, but in any case, kind of our first step we need to do is decide where our resonator is going to go on our box. Before we can do anything else, our 6-inch cone's got to go somewhere on this box, and it's got to go so that we know where we're going to place everything. Where our bridge sets is going to determine where everything else goes from there. The scale of our neck, our fingerboard, our neck position, our bridge position, everything lays out from the bridge. The measurements, everything is going to start from this point. So what I kind of like to do when I'm going to do my resonators is to kind of find a center point on my box, which I kind of do by just putting a little bit of tape on here. And this gives me some center lines. We're going to measure it out so that we got centers. Nice and easy. Our box is exactly 8 inches wide, so the center is 4 inches. Nice and handy. So 4 inches, I'm going to draw a center line. It'll kind of come in handy for marking our neck a little bit later as well. So our box has got a center line. So our box is kind of centered up. Now it's just kind of a matter of determining where do we want our cone to set on the box in our cover. I don't want it too far forward. I don't want it clear at the back. You know, you just got to kind of imagine when you're playing that, where do you want your arm to sit? Where do you want to play it at? I like to keep everything in just a couple inches from the back, just so I got a little bit of meat back here. And I'll probably put electronics in this, so I'm going to want room for a volume knob and maybe a tone back here. So we're gonna just set this rascal about right here. So I'm going to mark where these holes are at, and I'm just going to mark these holes, and then we're going to mark the outside of our cover. Now, with my cover marked, what I can do is kind of set my cone in here. Now I can measure it out, but I can kind of eyeball it as well. And I'll check it as well with a tape, but kind of got my center line, or what I believe is. I'll double check it here. Three and a quarter. We're real good right there. Now, if you noticed, that what I can do off of this is once I set that back on there, I can draw me a line on there. And if you'll check, that's a 1/4 inch shy of what my outside cover is. And where that'll come in handy is when we cut our hole here, we're going to want to make sure that we leave a 1/4 inch of material. We're going to want a hole in the top of our box so that we can get everything down through there. But we want to leave that material so that we can screw our cover down on here later. One thing that you'll make a mistake of if you get in a hurry is accidentally cutting that hole through the top. Now before we get in too big a hurry, we're going to stop and I'm going to set something up to show you another step that we're going to make here in just a minute. So just to kind of recap, I kind of made a center line for my box, figured out my center. Once I had a center line, I decided where I was going to set my cover. Once I decided where my cover was going to set, I found that center point. Once I had my center point, I marked my cover and then basically marked my cone. I know that this is where the center of my cone is, and essentially this is where my bridge point's going to be. And this pencil line that's sitting here, that's going to be my bridge point. I could essentially mark my neck, and I'll know the length of my neck and my scale, and I can go ahead and get my fingerboard. All of those dimensions I can establish now from this point. I know a lot of sizes from this point on because I know where my bridge is going to be. It's going to be right there. So we're going to stop here. This is the end of this little segment. So hang on, we'll be back in a minute with the next step.